It was the sound of the glass shattering that snapped me out of my daze. I wasn't expecting anything unusual that night. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic build-up. Just an ordinary evening. At least, that's what I thought. I had been standing in the corner, a drink in my hand, my eyes skimming over the crowd at the gala. The room was full, buzzing with the hum of laughter and conversation. It was the kind of corporate event where people talk business while pretending not to. I wasn't interested in the small talk, so I let my mind wander. It was always easier to do that when Jenna was by my side. I felt a little safer, even if it was just the two of us standing in the background. She looked so different that night, like she was someone else. Her dress shimmered under the light, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look almost unrecognizable. There was a certain energy about her that night. She wasn't just the woman I knew. No, tonight, she was the center of attention, and she wasn't trying to hide it. I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to seeing her so unguarded. As I glanced around the room, I saw him. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit that fit just a little too perfectly. I didn't know his name, didn't know anything about him. All I knew was the way he smiled at Jenna, the kind of smile that lingered just a little too long. My stomach turned, but I brushed it off. What did it matter? She was just being polite. After all, we were at a party, and people talk to people. That's all. But as the night went on, I couldn't ignore the strange tension building between them. It wasn't something overt, not at first. Just a glance here, a touch there. Small, insignificant moments. And yet, the more I watched, the more I realized I couldn't look away. Then it happened. I don't know what triggered it. Maybe it was the way she laughed at something he said, or the way he reached out to adjust her hair as if they were more than just two people at a party. But whatever it was, it hit me like a wave. I could see it now, the way she looked at him. The familiarity. The connection that wasn't there when she looked at me. She took a step closer to him, and for a brief second, I thought she was going to kiss him. No, not just any kiss. Something more intimate. Something that felt wrong. I don't know how to describe it, but I knew in that moment, deep down, something was shifting between them. Something I couldn't control. Then, without warning, he leaned in. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw it. His lips brushed against hers, lingering longer than I could have ever imagined. My world went silent. I wasn't sure how to react. Part of me wanted to scream, to charge over there and drag her away from him, but I was frozen. All I could do was watch. My heart raced. My palms were sweating. I couldn't breathe. She pulled away from him, her face a perfect mask of indifference. For a second, I thought she might look embarrassed. But no, she didn't. She just turned to me like nothing had happened, her eyes calm, composed. "Are you okay?" she asked, as if nothing was wrong. I stood there, stunned. My mouth went dry. How could she act like that? How could she kiss him and then turn to me like everything was fine? "Jenna." My voice cracked. "What just happened?" She smiled, a smile I'd seen hundreds of times, but tonight, it felt different. "It's not what you think, love. You're overreacting." Overreacting? I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to ask her how long this had been going on. But I couldn't. All I could do was stand there, my hands shaking, as she went back to talking with him. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. The music, the conversations, the clinking of glasses, it all faded into the background. I wasn't part of the night anymore. I was just an observer, watching my life unfold from the outside. And all I could think about was that kiss. I wanted to leave. I wanted to walk out the door, never look back. But I didn't. I stayed, frozen in place, pretending everything was fine, pretending I hadn't just seen my wife kiss another man. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. What I had just witnessed was only the beginning of something much worse. I couldn't stop replaying that moment over and over in my head. I should have walked away, confronted her, but I didn't. Something held me there, frozen, as if a part of me still hoped it had been some kind of mistake, some weird misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew the truth. That kiss wasn't an accident. It wasn't some innocent gesture. It was real, too real. And the fact that she brushed it off so easily, that hurt more than anything. As the night went on, I tried to act normal. I smiled. I talked to a few people, nodded politely. Jenna was back to her usual self, laughing and chatting with her coworkers. She was completely in her element, while I felt like a ghost just walking through the motions. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Every time I saw her talk to him, Every time I saw him touch her arm or laugh a little too loudly, my stomach turned. But I stayed quiet. I couldn't confront her here, not with everyone around. But I promised myself I would talk to her as soon as we got home. The night dragged on, and it felt like the hours were never ending. But when the event finally started winding down, I could feel my chest tighten. Jenna came up to me, her smile as bright as ever. "I'm ready to go when you are," she said. Her tone was light, casual, as if nothing had happened. She didn't even seem to notice the distance between us. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, let's head out." I didn't want to argue here, not in front of her colleagues. But the moment we got into the car, I knew I had to say something. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. As we drove home, the silence between us grew heavier. I glanced at her, but she didn't look at me. She stared out the window, lost in thought, or maybe just avoiding my gaze. I opened my mouth to speak, but every time I thought about asking her about Carter or the kiss, my throat tightened. What if I was overreacting? What if it was all in my head? But then I remembered the way she looked at him, the way she smiled at him. That look wasn't something I had ever seen her give me. It wasn't just a friendly smile. It was something else, something more intimate. And I couldn't just let it go. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed my hand on the steering wheel, making her jump. "Jenna, what the hell was that?" My voice cracked, and the anger I'd been holding in finally exploded. "You kissed him, in front of everyone. You kissed Carter." She flinched at the mention of his name, but didn't look at me. Instead, she sighed, her fingers tracing the edge of her seatbelt nervously. "Jason, please. It wasn't what you think." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation. But all I could do was stare at her, waiting for something, anything, that made sense. "You kissed him," I repeated, my voice trembling. "Right in front of me. And you expect me to just pretend nothing happened?" She didn't speak for a long moment. When she finally did, her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "I didn't want to hurt you, okay? But we've been drifting for a while now. And Carter, he's been there for me in ways you haven't been." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't breathe. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We've been fine, haven't we?" She was quiet for a long time, and when she spoke again, it was as though she had resigned herself to something. "You've been distant, Jason. For months now. I've tried to reach out to you, but you've been so consumed with everything else that I felt invisible. I didn't want to feel invisible anymore." Her words stung, but they also shook me. She was right. I had been distant. I had been so focused on work, on the stress of life, that I hadn't even noticed the growing gap between us. But hearing it from her, hearing her admit it so calmly, made it all the more real. And suddenly, I felt like the world was spinning too fast. I didn't know how to handle this. "But Carter," I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. "You went to him? Is that how it is now?" Jenna's silence was answer enough. She didn't deny it, didn't try to apologize. She just sat there, her gaze still fixed on the window. The rest of the drive was torturous. The words we hadn't spoken hung heavily between us. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know where to go from here. How do you come back from something like that? How do you go on with someone after they've kissed another man? After they've told you they've found someone else to give them what you couldn't? We arrived home, and she made no move to get out of the car. She just sat there, her hands folded in her lap, waiting for me to say something. But I had no words left. All I could do was stare at her, the woman I thought I knew, the woman who had just confessed something I wasn't ready to hear. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to understand. But I couldn't. Not yet. As I sat there, the tension thick in the air, I realized one thing for sure. Everything had changed. And nothing, not even love, could fix it. I couldn't fix it. Not anymore. The air in the house was thick, charged with unspoken words and feelings that neither of us was ready to confront. Jenna and I stood in the doorway of the living room, her hand still resting on the doorframe as she waited for me to say something. But I had no words. Nothing seemed adequate enough to express the confusion, the anger, the hurt that had overtaken me. I felt like I was suffocating in the weight of the silence. She finally spoke, her voice a quiet whisper, almost as if she was afraid of the answer. "Jason, do you still love me?" The question hit me like a freight train, and for a moment, I could hardly breathe. Of course I still loved her. How could I not? She was my wife, the woman I had built my life with, the woman I had trusted with everything. But after what had just happened, After the kiss, I wasn't sure what love meant anymore. I don't know, I whispered back, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. The truth was, I didn't know if I could love her the way I had before. How could I, knowing she had let someone else into our life like that? How could I keep pretending nothing had changed when everything had been shattered in an instant? She took a step forward, reaching out for my hand, but I stepped back instinctively. The touch felt foreign now, as if the bond we shared had been frayed beyond repair. She didn't pull away. Instead, she stood there, watching me, waiting for something, anything, from me. Jason, I never meant for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know what to believe anymore, I said, my voice shaking. You kissed him, Jenna, right in front of me, and you act like it's nothing. How am I supposed to trust you now? She looked down, her eyes avoiding mine. I know it was wrong, but it wasn't about him, not really. It was about me. I've been feeling so alone, Jason. So invisible. And Carter, he made me feel seen again. He listened to me. He didn't brush me off like you have for the past few months. Her words stung, and I felt a lump form in my throat. She was right. I had been distant. I had been wrapped up in my own world, consumed by work and the pressures of life, while she had been quietly slipping away from me. I had noticed it, of course, but I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to acknowledge the cracks that had formed in our marriage. And now, those cracks had split wide open, and there was no way to ignore them anymore. I didn't mean for this to happen, Jenna continued, her voice breaking as she looked at me. But you haven't been there for me, Jason. And when Carter showed interest, when he actually listened, it felt like I mattered. It felt like someone cared. I wanted to say something, to tell her how much I cared, how much I was still here for her, but the words caught in my throat. How could I? How could I stand here and pretend I hadn't just seen the woman I loved kiss another man, and tell me she had been looking for someone to fill the void I had left? The reality of it all was suffocating. I don't know if I can forgive you for this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt like a death sentence for our marriage, but I couldn't lie to her. I couldn't lie to myself. This wasn't something that could be swept under the rug. This wasn't something I could just forget. Jenna's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I saw the vulnerability in her that I had always known. She wasn't the confident, self-assured woman who had kissed Carter tonight. She was my wife, the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. And yet, somehow, she had become a stranger to me. I don't want to lose you, Jason. Please, don't give up on us, she pleaded, her voice thick with emotion. But the more she said, the more I felt the distance growing between us. Every word she spoke, every tear that felt like a reminder of the betrayal. It wasn't just the kiss. It was everything that led to it. The missed conversations, the ignored feelings, the years of silent resentment building up like a storm waiting to break. And now it had, and there was no going back. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to keep the frustration from boiling over. I don't know if I can fix this, Jenna. I don't know if I even want it anymore. You've crossed a line that can't be undone. She looked at me, her face pale, her lips trembling as she tried to hold back the sobs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I need you, Jason. I need us. Please don't give up on me. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, thick and suffocating. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to feel. All I knew was that nothing was the same anymore. The woman I had married, the woman I had trusted with my heart, had changed. And maybe, just maybe, I had changed too. I walked out of the living room, unable to stand the weight of her gaze any longer. I needed space. I needed to think. But more than anything, I needed to figure out how to survive the wreckage that our marriage had become. As I walked into the kitchen, I could hear her crying in the next room, the sound of her pain piercing through the walls. And as much as I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, I couldn't. I couldn't touch the one thing that had broken me beyond repair. And as I stood there, staring out the window, I knew one thing for sure. Our marriage was over. It wasn't just the kiss. It was everything. It was the years of silence, the growing distance, and the crushing weight of knowing that everything I thought I knew about love, about us, had been a lie. The days that followed were a blur, a strange mix of silence and tension that neither of us knew how to break. Jenna tried. She would talk to me, apologize again and again, but each time, the words felt emptier than the last. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but there was something else too, a kind of desperation, as if she was clinging to a thread she thought would save her. But there was no saving her anymore, not in my eyes. And I don't know if I could save myself. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see her kissing him again. The way she didn't pull away. The way she smiled at him like he was the only person in the room. I hated the fact that my mind kept returning to it. The kiss. The look. The way everything I thought I knew about my life had been twisted in an instant. I should have been able to move past it, to get back to some semblance of normal. But there was no normal anymore. And it wasn't just the kiss. It was the conversations we hadn't had, the unspoken resentment that had festered between us for months. She had been right about one thing. I had been distant. I hadn't noticed the slow unraveling of our relationship, hadn't realized how much she had been hurting until it was too late. How had I missed it? How had I missed her slipping away from me, right under my nose? I tried to focus on work, but it was useless. My thoughts kept drifting back to Jenna, and every time I saw her face, the weight of it all came crashing down again. I could hear her, faintly, from the other room, asking me if I was okay, if I wanted to talk. I could feel the desperation in her voice, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. What was there to say? What could I possibly say that wouldn't make everything worse? I wasn't the type of person to give up on things easily. I believed in fighting for what mattered. But after what she had done, after what I had seen, I didn't know if I had anything left to fight with. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to just pack up and leave this house, this life, behind me. But the truth was, I couldn't. I was stuck, trapped in a world I didn't recognize anymore. I was tethered to her, to us, in a way that I couldn't explain. That's when I made a decision. I couldn't keep going like this. I couldn't stay in this limbo, pretending like things would get better. I needed answers. I needed to understand what had happened, what had pushed her to do what she did. And most of all, I needed to know if there was any chance of us ever finding our way back. So, I waited until the night came, until the house was quiet, and then I asked her to sit down. We were in the living room, the lights dimmed, the shadows of the night stretching across the walls. Jenna looked at me, her face pale, her eyes uncertain. I could tell she was scared, scared of what I might say, scared of what I might ask. Jenna, I need you to be honest with me, I said, my voice steady, though my insides were anything but. What happened between you and Carter? Was it just the kiss, or was there more to it than that? Her face tightened, her eyes darting away for a brief moment before she met my gaze again. For a long time, she said nothing, her lips pressed together like she was debating whether to open up or keep everything buried. But I wasn't giving her that option anymore. She owed me the truth, and I wasn't leaving until I had it. I don't know what you want me to say, she finally whispered. It wasn't just the kiss. There were moments when I felt like I was losing myself, losing us. And when he started paying attention to me, really listening to me, it felt like someone finally saw me. It felt like I wasn't invisible anymore. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I kept it in check. I couldn't let it explode. Not yet. So that's what this is about. You felt invisible, so you went to him? You didn't think about how it might destroy everything? I never meant for it to happen this way, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't want to hurt you, Jason. I thought maybe I could fix things without it getting to this point. But I couldn't. I felt so alone, and he was there when I needed someone. And I thought, maybe he could be the one who understood me when you didn't. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to shout at her, to tell her how wrong she was, how she had broken me in ways I couldn't even explain. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I just stood there, letting her words sink in, knowing that nothing would ever be the same. I had to ask. It was the only thing I could do. Did you love him? Jenna flinched at the question, her eyes wide with surprise. But I could see the hesitation in her face, the way she opened her mouth as if to speak, but then closed it again. She wasn't ready to admit it, and I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it, anyway. But in the silence that followed, the truth settled heavily between us. No, she said after a long pause. I don't love him, but I think I loved the attention. I loved feeling important again. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what mattered. I forgot about us. Her words cut deeper than the kiss ever could. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that she had lost herself, and I hadn't been there to help her find her way back. And now, I wasn't sure we could find our way back, either. I didn't say anything more after that. I couldn't. My mind was too clouded with everything she had just said, with the image of her and Carter, with the realization that our marriage, everything I thought we had been broken long before that kiss. And maybe, just maybe, it was beyond saving. The room felt suffocating. Every word Jenna had just spoken echoed in my head, like an endless loop of truth that I couldn't escape. "I forgot about us," she said. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, maybe she hadn't forgotten at all. Maybe she had just decided that we weren't enough anymore, that I wasn't enough. And the worst part was that I hadn't even seen it coming. I had been so caught up in my own life, my own struggles, that I hadn't noticed the cracks forming in our marriage. I hadn't realized how badly she was slipping away. Jenna's eyes were still on me, waiting for some kind of response, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. What was there to say? She had already said it all. She had laid out her feelings, her betrayal, her need for something I wasn't giving her. And now, there was nothing left but the wreckage. The trust was shattered, the foundation of everything we had built together crumbling beneath me. How was I supposed to rebuild that? How was I supposed to go on, knowing that the woman I loved had found comfort in another man's arms? The silence between us grew heavier, stretching into an uncomfortable lull. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, each second dragging on like an eternity. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words didn't come. What was I supposed to say to someone who had just confessed to looking for solace in another man's attention? Could I forgive her? Could I ever look at her the same way again? "Jason," Jenna said softly, breaking the silence. "I know I've hurt you, and I hate myself for it, but I can't change what I've done. All I can do is ask for your forgiveness. I don't want to lose you, not like this." I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she had destroyed, how much she had torn apart inside me. But I didn't. I was too tired, too broken, to yell. I just stood there, looking at her, feeling the weight of everything we had lost. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Jenna," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt like a weight that I could barely carry, but they were the truth. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." Her face crumpled at the words, the tears that had been building up finally spilling over. She reached out to me, but I couldn't move. I couldn't allow myself to give her that. "Not yet. Please, Jason, don't say that. I've never meant to hurt you. I didn't want to lose you." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the trust was gone. The love, the connection we had shared, it felt like it had been erased in that one moment. I couldn't just forget the image of her with him, kissing him like he was the only person in the room. I couldn't forget the way she had looked at me afterward, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just shattered everything we had. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," I said, the words tasting bitter. "Every time I look at you, all I see is that kiss. All I see is what you did, and I don't know how to get past it." Jenna's shoulders shook with silent sobs, her hands wringing together in front of her. "I know I've messed up, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix it, Jason. Please, just give me a chance to make it right." I stared at her for a long moment, my heart torn in two. I wanted to forgive her. I wanted to believe that she could change, that we could fix what was broken. But how could we? How could we go back to what we had when the foundation had been cracked so deeply? Could I ever truly trust her again? Could I ever look at her the same way? "I don't know," I finally whispered. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." The words cut through the air like a knife, and I could see the pain in her eyes, the realization that she had pushed me so far away that I wasn't sure I could ever come back. She stood there, tears streaming down her face, as if waiting for me to change my mind, to offer her the lifeline she was desperately clinging to. But I couldn't. I didn't know how. "I need space," I said, my voice firm, though it felt like a death sentence to our relationship. "I need time to think. I need time to figure out what I want." Jenna nodded, her face crumpling with regret and heartbreak. "I understand. I'll give you the space you need. But please, don't give up on us. Please don't give up on me." I turned away from her then, unable to watch her break any further. The sight of her tears, the pain in her eyes, it felt like a weight that I couldn't bear. I needed to be alone. I needed to think, to process everything that had happened, everything that was happening. But I knew deep down that no matter how much time passed, things would never be the same. The trust had been broken, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. As I walked out of the room, leaving her behind, the silence in the house was deafening. And for the first time, I truly felt alone. The next few days were nothing short of suffocating. It was as if the house had become a prison, and I couldn't find a way to escape. Jenna tried her best to give me the space I had asked for, but even in her silence, her presence loomed over everything. Every corner I turned, every room I walked into, there she was, her absence louder than ever. It was almost like living with a shadow of someone I once knew. Her attempts at reaching out, with texts and brief words here and there, only felt like distant echoes. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt, it was the deep, gnawing sense of isolation that had settled into the pit of my stomach. I wasn't just losing her, I was losing myself. I had convinced myself I could handle it, that maybe in time, I could come to terms with everything. But every moment, every passing second, only seemed to drive the wedge further between us. It wasn't just the kiss anymore, it was everything that followed. The feeling that she had kept things from me, that she hadn't been honest about how unhappy she had been. I could hear the words she had said, replaying them in my mind. You weren't there for me. I felt invisible. It wasn't just about Carter. It was about the years of distance between us, the growing chasm that I had been too blind to see. I went through the motions of everyday life. Work, errands, trying to act like everything was normal, but nothing felt normal. Every time I looked at her, I saw the damage, the crack in our foundation that couldn't be fixed with a few apologies or promises. There was no going back to how things were. I had been betrayed, and the worst part was that I wasn't sure if I could ever look at her the same way again. It was a Saturday morning when I decided to take a walk to clear my head. I couldn't stay inside the house any longer. I needed some air, some distance, some kind of clarity. As I walked through the streets, everything around me seemed distant, muted. People were going about their lives, laughing, talking, going to breakfast, or meeting friends. It all felt so trivial compared to what I was going through. As I passed the park, I saw a father playing with his daughter. They were laughing together, and for a brief moment, I envied their simplicity, their joy. Why couldn't I just be like that? Why couldn't I just push everything aside and move on? But I couldn't. Not yet. The weight of what had happened was too heavy. I felt like I was drowning in my own thoughts, trapped in the endless cycle of regret and confusion. I wasn't sure if I could ever get out. The worst part was not knowing what the future held. Could I truly forgive her? Could I rebuild what we once had, or was that just a fantasy now? I spent hours walking, my feet taking me to places I didn't even recognize. I needed time to think, to make sense of everything. When I finally returned home, it was dark outside. I didn't even realize how long I had been gone. As I entered the house, the silence greeted me like an old friend. Jenna wasn't in the living room, and for a moment, I thought maybe she had gone out. Maybe she had taken the opportunity to give me even more space. But as I walked down the hall, I heard her voice, low and soft, coming from our bedroom. She was on the phone. I stopped in my tracks, unsure of whether to keep listening or to turn away. But something in her voice stopped me. There was an edge to it, a desperation that I hadn't heard before. She wasn't speaking to anyone I knew, and as I strained to listen, I could make out bits of the conversation. Please, just don't tell him, she whispered. I can't lose him. Not like this. I don't know what I'll do if I do. Her words cut through me like a knife, and for a moment, I thought I might be imagining things. But no, it was real. She was talking to someone else, someone I didn't know. The anxiety that had been building inside me surged, a sick feeling rising in my chest. What was she hiding? What was she keeping from me now? I stood frozen, my breath shallow, my heart racing. I could feel the ground beneath me shift, the fragile reality I had been holding on to for so long starting to crack once more. This wasn't just about Carter anymore. This wasn't just about the kiss. There was something more, something I didn't know, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to find out what it was. As she finished the call, I heard the soft click of the phone being set down. She didn't hear me standing there, her back to the door as she stared out the window. I could feel my pulse quicken, the urge to confront her surging within me, but I held myself back. I wasn't ready for this, not yet, but I had to know. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The secrets, the lies, they were suffocating me. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know something was off. I walked into the room, my steps slow but deliberate, until I was standing just behind her. Jenna, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding in my chest. She turned around quickly, startled, but her eyes immediately shifted away from mine, avoiding my gaze. The moment of tension hung in the air like a thick fog. I didn't give her the chance to speak. Who were you talking to? I asked, my voice low, dangerous even to my own ears. Who was that on the phone? Her face paled, and I saw her struggle for words. She opened her mouth but closed it again, her hand nervously brushing through her hair. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she tried to hide it, but it was too late. I had already heard enough. "Jason, please," she said, her voice trembling now. "It's not what you think." But the words felt hollow. They were always hollow. "It's not what you think." How many times had I heard that before? How many times had I trusted her, only for the truth to slip away from me? I shook my head, unable to look at her. "I don't know what's going on anymore. I don't know who you are anymore." The words hung between us, heavy and suffocating. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that I wasn't just losing her. I was losing myself in the process. The room was still, the air between us thick with tension, and my chest felt like it was caving in. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't look at the woman I thought I knew. I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my ears, drowning out everything else. Jenna stood there, her hands trembling at her sides, her face pale and drawn. I could see the fear in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore. She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. It was as if she was searching for something, anything to make this situation right. But the reality was, it couldn't be fixed. Not just with a few whispered apologies or promises to do better. What she had done, the lies, the secrecy, the betrayal, ran too deep. It wasn't just the kiss anymore. It was the fact that she had lied to me, not just about Carter, but about everything. Finally, she found her voice. "Jason, I swear to you, there's nothing going on between me and him. It was a mistake. It was a moment of weakness, and I regret it. But please, don't think that. Don't think that I'm in love with him. I'm not." Her words didn't make me feel better. They didn't erase the image of them together, of her looking at him like he was the answer to everything she needed. The truth, as it stood, was this. I couldn't trust her anymore. I couldn't just wipe away the months of neglect, the years of silence, the growing distance that had led to this exact moment. I had been so absorbed in my own world, so wrapped up in the routine of our life, that I had missed everything falling apart around me. "Then what was that, Jenna?" I asked, my voice low, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. "What was it that made you kiss him? If it was just a moment of weakness, why didn't you stop? Why didn't you come to me first? You didn't. You went to him." I could see her wince at the words, her guilt written across her face, but I couldn't stop myself. "I needed someone," she said, her voice faltering. "I didn't feel like you needed me anymore. I felt invisible. And Carter, he saw me. He listened. He made me feel like I was important." I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lash out, to throw everything back in her face. But instead, I took a deep breath and shook my head. "That's the problem, isn't it? You didn't feel seen, so you found someone else who would. And now here we are." My words hit her like a slap, but I didn't feel sorry for it. She needed to hear it. "I've been trying," she said, her voice shaking. "I've been trying to make this work. I never wanted to hurt you, Jason. I swear to you I didn't. But somewhere along the way, we lost something, and I didn't know how to fix it." The truth stung. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to admit that maybe I had played a part in our unraveling. I had been so wrapped up in my own issues, so obsessed with what was going on in my head, that I had stopped paying attention to the woman I loved. I had stopped noticing how she was slipping away from me, and now, everything was coming apart because of it. "You didn't know how to fix it?" I repeated, my voice bitter. "Jenna, you don't just fix things like this. You don't just fix a marriage by hiding things, by going to someone else for comfort. You fix it by talking, by being honest, by not waiting until everything falls apart to admit there's a problem." I watched her shoulders slump as if the weight of my words hit her all at once. She opened her mouth to respond, but I couldn't let her speak. Not now. Not when everything between us felt like it was slipping away faster than I could hold on. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I whispered, the words breaking something deep inside me. The woman I married, she would never have done this. But now, I'm just staring at a stranger, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. Jenna's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. She just stood there, helpless, as if she didn't know what to do anymore. And in a way, I didn't either. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know how to move forward when every step forward felt like it was pushing me further away from her. "You want me to forgive you?" I asked, though I wasn't sure if I wanted an answer. You want me to just move past all of this like it's nothing? Like it's just some mistake that can be swept under the rug? My chest was tight, my emotions threatening to spill over, but I fought to keep them in check. How can I, Jenna? How can I forgive something like this when you've torn everything apart? She stepped forward, her voice breaking. I don't want you to forgive me right away. I know it's not that simple. But please, Jason, don't give up on me. On us. Please. But I wasn't sure I could. Every time I looked at her, I saw the lies, the distance, the things she had kept hidden from me. I didn't know how to forget the hurt, how to pretend that I could just forgive her and go back to the way things were. It wasn't that simple. Not anymore. I don't know if I can give you what you want, I said quietly, my heart heavy with the words. I need time. I need time to figure out if I even want to try. Jenna nodded, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes. I love you, Jason. Please don't forget that. But as I walked away from her, as I left her standing there in the silent emptiness of our home, I couldn't help but wonder, could love really fix this? Could anything? Days turned into weeks, and the weight of everything still hung heavy over us. But somehow, despite the tension and the heartbreak, something began to shift. Jenna had given me the space I needed, and I had done a lot of thinking. I spent days asking myself the same questions over and over. Could I ever trust her again? Could we rebuild what we had? And as painful as it was, I realized that the answer wasn't as simple as yes or no. Relationships weren't built on perfection. They were built on effort, on the willingness to face the worst parts of yourself and still choose each other. Jenna never stopped trying. She kept reaching out, not just with words, but with actions. She would leave me notes, little reminders of the things we had shared, the good moments we had once had. It wasn't about making it right immediately, but showing me she was willing to put in the effort to rebuild the trust that had been broken. She was committed, and for the first time in a long time, I saw it. The person I had fallen in love with, the woman who had always been there for me, was still in there. I couldn't say I wasn't scared. I was terrified, but that fear wasn't enough to stop me from trying. We started talking again, really talking. About everything. Our mistakes, our hopes, the things we'd left unsaid for far too long. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I wanted to give up, moments when the hurt felt too much. But we kept going. Step by step, word by word, we started to heal. One evening, after dinner, Jenna reached across the table and took my hand. I know it won't be easy, she said, her voice soft but certain. But I'm here, and I'll be here for as long as it takes. No matter what. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't see the betrayal. I didn't see the woman who had hurt me. I saw the woman who was sitting across from me, the one who had always been my partner, my equal. I saw the woman who was still fighting for us. I'm scared too, I said, my voice hoarse. I'm scared of what comes next. But I think we can make it through, if we're willing to try. Jenna squeezed my hand, her eyes bright with a mixture of hope and relief. I know we can, she said softly. And maybe that was all we needed, hope. A reason to believe that, despite everything, we could find our way back to each other. It wasn't about forgetting the past, but about learning from it, about building something stronger and more honest than before. We didn't have all the answers, and there would be more struggles along the way. But we had something to work toward. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. As we sat there, in the quiet of our kitchen, I realized that love wasn't always perfect. Sometimes it was messy, sometimes it broke, and sometimes it took everything you had to put it back together. But if you were willing to fight for it, to face the hardest parts of yourself, then maybe, just maybe, love could be enough to heal even the deepest wounds. We had a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid, because we were in it together, and that was all that mattered.